So, feeling better today. Got over the stomach bug. Cut my hair. So I've been cutting my own hair for over 20 years now. Every once in a while I'll go somewhere else to have them do it. Typically though, I cut my own because I know the shape of my own skull really well. So I know every little nook and cranny. And unfortunately though, last night I realized that it might be one of the last times that I'm able to cut my own hair. It was a little bit starting to get a little bit painful, you know, reaching back behind there and holding a mirror with the other hand, and yeah, so, but didn't do too bad. Anyway, medication. So there's a whole slew of medications that are out there. The most commonly used is carbidopa, levodopa. That's what I'm on. Cinemet. It's 25 carbidopa, 100 levodopa. Levodopa is the medicine. When it gets released, it gets transformed into dopamine in the brain. So that's what helps mitigate some of the motor function issues that comes with PD. The carbidopa actually kind of protects the levodopa because the levodopa will get absorbed too quickly by itself in the system and won't reach the brain in time for it to do what it needs to do. So the carbidopa kind of wraps itself around there and slowly dissolves, and then lets the levodopa get to the brain and do what it needs to do. That also helps reduce the dose size of the levodopa, because levodopa can have some side effects, nausea, fatigue, things like that. There's, every medication has a list of side effects, and so obviously a larger dose of levodopa can increase those side effects. So the carbidopa helps keep the lower dosage of levodopa intact while it gets through your system. It can be transformed into dopamine. Then there's also dopamine agonists, which are dopamine replacement. From what I've heard from other, just listen to other Parkinson's patients, especially young onset, the dopamine agonist is a great substitution if either A, the carbidopa levodopa doesn't work right for you, or if you do suffer from a lot of those side effects. Like if the side effects hit you a little bit harder, the dopamine agonist is a great substitute. So those are kind of the two big ones. There's some others. The delivery method, obviously pill form, is what I take, but there's also pumps where they stick a thing in your side and it kind of continuously feeds you what you need. There's an inhaler form where it breaks it into almost like a powder, and you can take the levodopa that way. Really, it seems like every time I look, there's a new medication for Parkinson's. It's more or less just a different delivery method for carbidopa levodopa, or for levodopa specifically. So those are the two medications. I'm on 4, 25, 100 carbidopa levodopa a day. So essentially I'm taking about every 6 hours, if you were to break it up evenly. Unfortunately though, with like sleep cycles, trying to get my full 8 hours plus in for sleep, it really comes down to about every 4 to 5 hours is really what I'm taking it, which is where the off periods come in the mornings specifically. If I'm really should be taking it every 6 hours and I'm asleep for 8 of those, I take it and then I'm asleep for 8. By the time I wake up, it's really starting to wear off. We went to a symposium, a Parkinson's symposium put on by the KU Medical Center in Kansas City area in Overland Park. They had a great chart that kind of showed the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of the efficacy. The efficacy, that's a PBS word right there, of the medication over time, and how, so you take your medication usually when you're down. So you're on it, maybe you're just starting an off period or you're in an off period, and then slowly you come back up to normal dopamine levels. And eventually it rises to a point where you're actually a little bit over on the dopamine side, and that's where you start with dyskinesia. So dyskinesia is involuntary random movements. It's usually rhythmic, and you might see some PD patients that, do this, Night of the Roxbury. Baby, don't hurt me, no more. Anyway, so that's caused by like almost too much dopamine, and then you slowly start coming back down, and you're back in that normal period for a good chunk, and then you start to slide back down to below where you need to be. So you want to start taking your next round of medication right before you dip down to the off period. It takes about 20-30 minutes for it to do what it needs to do. So you're in this off period, and then you take your medication, you bring back up. And so when you first start, it looks like this, but over time, as the disease progresses, it starts looking like this. You have to take the medication more often because you've progressed so much that the medication isn't lasting as long as it should, or it doesn't have the same efficacy as it did before. And so those off periods will come faster, and the peak periods will come more often and a little bit more stronger. So right now I'm kind of on this, when I dip, I dip into the off periods, but it doesn't take much for me to kind of get back to normal. And then when I hit my peak, I'm not really at that, where I'm peaking really high. I'm right where I need to be. It's like, as long as I remember to take my medication. There's times when I will go, we'll go on a shopping trip for the day. I'll take my medicine, I'm fine, and then I realize, shoot, we're driving an hour away. So that's an hour there and an hour back to go on these shopping trips. By the time I get home, I'm past my time, and because I forget to take it with me. I need to remember to carry a little fob or an extra whatever container or something to carry some with me. So if I get stuck in a situation where I can't get back home, take my medicine. That's one of the downsides to living in a small town, is just you take for granted that you're always a minute away from home. So if you need to run home for something really quick, you can. I work a mile away from my house, which is literally on the other side of town. I'm really 3 minutes from everywhere, and you forget about that when you go on a trip. So there's the different types of medication, and then there's treatments that can be done. One that is kind of a huge breakthrough within the last, 10 years, 15 years, is the DBS, the deep brain stimulation, where they actually go in and surgically put essentially a pacemaker for your dopamine into your brain. And you have a device that you can control it, turn it on and off. And I don't think I'm quite there yet. Some people will go and get the DBS right away. What it does is it removes the need for medication, which is great. The thing about it for me is I've done some research on DBS. I've listened to, at the symposium and online on podcasts, and I've read up on it. And from my understanding, it only has an effect of about 7 to 10 years. I don't think I'm quite there yet for the need. It would be great if I was at a point where I was taking medication 7 or 8 times a day. And it was just kind of constantly feeding myself medication. It would be great to go in and just have this thing do it for me. I don't think I'm quite there yet, and I don't want to have to go back in 10 years when I'm really kind of at that point then where I need it. Why do it twice when I only need to do it once? Or why do it 3 times when I only need to do it twice, or whatever. I'm only 44. I still have a long road ahead of me, so no reason to go rooting around inside this old melon quite yet. The DBS is great from what I hear, just not quite ready for it for me. I think that the key is, and a good doctor, my doctor, and good doctors will have you contribute to the communication. Hey, is this working for you? It's not? Okay, let's try this. All right. Like I said, I was on 3 a day, wasn't really working. Moved it up to 4. Okay, that's the sweet spot right there for me right now. You're having horrible side effects to carbidopa, levodopa. Let's put you on, the dopamine agonist. Dopamine agonist not doing what it needs to do. Let's talk about DBS. Let's talk about a pump. Some doctors will even say, do you think you're ready to go on medication? Or is this something that you can manage right now on your own without the medication? For me, I think because I had somewhat been symptomatic for 5 years, by the time he talked to me about carbidopa, levodopa, I was like, let's do it. He prescribed it that day, and I got it filled, and I got on it right away. And it made a world of difference for me. It takes care of the motor functions. It doesn't take care of the non-motor functions. And so, my posture's better, my rigidity's gone, the aches and pains, the dystonia. I talked a little bit about dystonia the other day. Dystonia is when your body kind of contorts and constricts. And I get it really bad in my foot. If I'm walking a lot, I'll notice my foot will kind of cramp up like this, and I'm walking weird, like my foot's turned inward, and I'm dragging it feels like I've replaced my foot with a very painful rock, and it's just like this, and it loosens up eventually. And then I also get it in my hand. In fact, it's the first instance of dystonia was I could feel in my hand. And it's usually after repetitive, like for me, it's like repetitive motion. So I do keyboard and mouse a lot for work. So I thought I was getting carpal tunnel. And then with the introduction of carbidopa, levodopa, I noticed that it wasn't, I wouldn't get it. Dystonia, and people with PD will get dystonia in all sorts of places: their neck, their back, their legs, their feet, their hands. And, sometimes as it progresses, it can get a lot worse. It really kind of twists you up. So luckily for me right now, I have just a few instances of it, and I'm able to kind of work through it, and medication helps relieve that. So yeah, but the most important thing is, like, whatever you're experiencing, have that communication with your doctor about it. And if you're not reacting to the medication the way they had hoped, communicate that. If you're having, side effects, communicate that. Because there are different options, whether it's a delivery method, the amount, the strength, the type of medication, the type of treatment. There's a lot. So find the medication that works for you. Medication helps relieve the symptoms of Parkinson's. Exercise helps slow the progression so that, cycle that I was talking about, it keeps it from getting like this as quickly. So exercise to slow the progression, which will help reduce the amount of medication you need to take as time goes on. I mean, it won't reduce the amount of medication you need to take. I mean, eventually the medication will get more and more, but it will slow that process down to where you're not increasing your medication as quickly, through exercise. So yeah, that's medication. So yeah, talk to people, talk to your doctor, and find what works best for you. And don't worry, we've got this.